Hey everyone, it's time for another live look at the astrology. My name is Katie Sweetman, and this is your look at the astrology of November 28th through December 4th, 2022. I can't believe that it's going to be December this week. I know I keep saying that, but I don't know. Time's kind of funny. Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's all of us. I feel like I'm somewhere in September. I'm like, why is it not warm outside? It's not warm anymore. At least here in the Northern Hemisphere. I'm here just outside of New York City, and every week we gather live to look at the astrology. And, how do we work with the astrology? What's sort of the deeper, let's say, archetypes and meanings that the sky is trying to reveal to us? And here we are, we're coming to the end of the year, and boy, what a year it's been. And we are, let's say at this point, a month out from eclipse season. So we're still in that sort of energy, especially now that we're in a new lunar month, where sometimes these eclipse stories can come in. But over 2022, I guess since the middle of January, if I remember correctly, the South Node's been in Scorpio, and that's been fun. I don't know. How are you all doing? I know that many of you watch live. So if you're in the live chat, do say hello. It's always fun to see where you're watching from, or maybe you're not watching live. I know sometimes people say, Katie, I feel like I know you, when we actually sit down one-on-one for a session. I watch you when I'm at the gym, or I listen to you on my commute. But hello, nice to see you all again, and sort of wrap our heads around the fact that it's somehow the end of 2022. Shameless plug, I'm going to be doing my annual astrology of, in this case, astrology of 2023 on December 15th at 8 p.m. Eastern. Of course, as always, you can still register to get the replay. Link is in the show notes, or you can go to my website, empoweringastrology.com. We've got a lot to talk about in this webinar, in a couple of weeks, and especially as we go into the new year. We've got two major planets changing signs in March of 2023. March of 2023 is going to be a very interesting month. We'll have to have our eyes on it, because Saturn, as I've been kind of dropping Saturn hints over the past few months. Saturn's going to go into Pisces on March 7th, and it's a whole new Saturnian chapter. And we're building something very new, personally and collectively. Saturn is the planet that reveals what are we building and constructing, but also our personal and collective lessons around the sign, in this case, Pisces. Pisces is getting a lot of airtime this week, so in a way, we're getting a little bit of a preview of Saturn in Pisces starting March 7th, and Saturn will be in Pisces until 2025 and 2026. Pluto, remember Pluto? It's been spending the last 15 years in Capricorn, and it's going to go into Aquarius. It'll be a brief from March 23rd, 2023 until June 11th, 2023. Pluto, it'll dip into Aquarius. It has not been in Aquarius since the 1780s and 90s. Yes, you heard me correctly. Pluto has a 248-year orbit. It doesn't change signs very often. It has an irregular orbit. And so it spends, if you were born in the 80s, or even if you're, older than that, Pluto is sort of zipping through some of these signs, but we're starting to get to the part of Pluto's journey where it's going to spend 16, 20. We're not going to live as long to see Pluto in Taurus, where it's been 30 years in Taurus. I'm getting a little bit off topic, but yes, I am doing it's probably going to be another 2-hour webinar on the astrology of 2023 and what it means for you. There will be a sign by sign section. Sign up, link in the show notes, go to empoweringastrology.com. But we're still in 2022. And we are in Sagittarius season. So even though Sagittarius season began, last week. I know last week's a little bit of a blur. But we did have a new moon. And so we're in a completely new lunar month. And so one that is really steeped in the energies of Sagittarius. And Sagittarius is the planet that helps us discover the world. Whether that is going to school, and I mean that from a higher education standpoint, getting a degree, or even just educating yourself about the world, reading all the books, traveling, exploration, even religion, philosophy, a sense of what does this all mean? Sagittarius is a fire sign. It's the fire of wisdom and knowledge. It sort of inspires us and motivates us to know more and to learn more and to see more. And this is a Sagittarius season where, we're kind of feeling that fire. We're feeling a little bit of itch, and maybe we're dreaming of far-flung destinations. It wasn't that long ago that we had eclipses in Sagittarius and Gemini. This was 2020 and 2021, and the South Node was in Sagittarius. So just like 2001 and 2002, the South Node was in Sagittarius, and we had a lot of big changes around travel, in 2020 and 2021. But that's hopefully, fingers crossed, a distant memory. And, but still this sense of faith and truth, and what is our faith, and how has our vision of the world changed in the past few years, and what do we believe in? What do we stand for? What's our truth? What's our conviction? It's all Sagittarius themes. And like I said, we're in this new lunar month that's dedicated. It's lived through the archetype of Sagittarius. But we can't forget that Jupiter's in Pisces, and Jupiter is the other sign. Well, Jupiter rules Sagittarius, Jupiter rules Pisces. So when we look to Pisces, we see the other side of the coin, so to speak. It's not truth and wisdom and knowledge that we find outside of ourselves. It's truth and wisdom and knowledge that we find within. And Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac, and it really is an important sign. They're all important, but it's an important sign that moves us. It helps us to transmit meaning. It's not enough to read all the books. It's not enough to even travel to every place in the world. It's, what do we discover? And that's really at the heart of Jupiter and Pisces. It's that sense of revelation, and something has been revealed to us, and we see things a little bit differently. And maybe we were aching for a sense of truth or a sense of meaning in our lives. And that's a question that comes to me a lot as an astrologer for my clients. Why am I here? What am I supposed to be doing? Of course, I can't really answer that question. Who can answer that question? Only us can answer that question. But to be a steward of the astrology chart and to give a sense of maybe what the astrology in the natal chart is trying to reveal through the, why am I here? What am I working on? And maybe as we go through this week, these are deeper questions that we are coming to. What does it all mean? Here we are at the end of another year. What did it mean? What did I learn? What did I discover? What was revealed to me? I say revealed because there's that sense of inner knowing with both Sagittarius, but especially Pisces. It's that sense of knowing that if you meditate, or if you have some sort of spiritual practice, or if you're just a deeply existential person, you feel things and you know things. And it's you try to convey it to other people, and it never, translates. So that's sort of beauty and sort of the mystery of Pisces. So this week, like I said, Pisces is getting a lot of airtime. We will have the moon around midweek come to Pisces and make what's called the first quarter moon. And that first quarter moon plays off of the new moon of November 25th. Was that the day of the new moon? I'd have to search for it. So the sense of that we are at the first quarter moon, and we have to, there's a sense of tension. There's a sense of what are we working on this month? And sometimes events can bunch up around the new moon. Like I said, that's midweek. But the real story this week is a Neptune turning direct after a 5-month retrograde in Pisces. We will get back to that in a moment. So just to kind of reintroduce myself, my name is Katie Sweetman, and I'm an astrologer and psychic medium here in the New York City area. And every week we gather live to talk about the astrology, to look at the astrology, and something that you hear me say over and over again, that the astrology is 50%. You are the other 50%. be a participant. That is the whole point. But there are times when, especially a planet like Neptune, because it's what's called an evolutionary planet, we can be a participant. We also have to honor the fact that there are things that are bigger than us. We cannot control time. That's what astrology is, or one of the things that astrology is that it's the study of time, but it's metaphoric time, symbolic time, how time reveals something in us. There's that word again, reveals, but also how do we live time? How is the sort of the structure of time? The thing that you can't control is the structure of time. What you can work on is what time reveals in you, and we can all live time differently. So that's the part that you can control. So let's look at the astrology of this week as we go a little bit deeper into Sagittarius season. So this is the astrology for November 28th through December 4th, 2022. We start the week with Mars trine Saturn, almost at Aquarius. Mars trine Saturn. So Mars, let's not forget that Mars is in Gemini, and Mars is retrograde from October 30th until January 12th. And it's during this time that we have to look at our actions. We have to sort of feel into how we are using our Mars. Do we overuse our Mars? Do we underuse our Mars? Mars in Gemini can be a little restless, a little impulsive. It sort of says things first without necessarily thinking things through. There's good sides to that. Be quick in your thinking, but sort of the downside to it is sometimes you say something first and you're like, oh, maybe I should have said it a little bit differently. So the retrograde says it's not like we can't take action or everything has to come to a halt. It's sort of something that I talk about in my work, is that there's this sort of cultural narrative that came out of, I feel like, the last 5-10 years only, where it's like, oh, something's retrograde, it means that nothing's happening. That's not true. It's sorry, I'm getting my Sagittarius soapbox for a moment. It just means that it's a different state of energy. It is receptive, not active. We have to sort of work with it internally instead of just like use it instinctively. Mars. So this is a Mars where we have to sort of find some consciousness or even conscientiousness around our Mars. And so Mars is in Gemini, and it's really playing off of these Sagittarius planets that we have right now. We got the Sun in Sagittarius, Mercury, Venus, so 3 planets in total. And Sagittarius, the sign of big ideas, vision, faith, adventure, optimism, truth, lower T truth. And how Mars is really getting us to sort of stand up for what we believe in, or really share our vision or share our ideas this week. But we have to sort of use that conscientiously. There's that word. So that said, Mars is making a trine to Saturn, so that's a sort of good start to the week to get things done, to sort of get organized and, let's say, construct that bigger vision. This is the second of 3 trines that Mars is making to Saturn, while Mars is retrograde. The last one's in March of 2023. So we're going back to something from October, reconstructing, recalibrating, getting a different point of view. The moon's in Aquarius as we start the week, and I'm just mentioning that more so because we're just weeks after eclipses, and I know you're like, Katie, when does it end? But that's the thing about eclipse energy, is it seeds different moments in time, and so something like the moon back in Aquarius, Monday, Tuesday, could activate some eclipse energy. So I'm just sort of putting that on your radar. Then we get into midweek, and not midweek, we get into Tuesday, the 29th, and Mercury, I sort of mentioned this earlier, Mercury in Sagittarius makes an opposition to Mars. This is great for, let's say, spirited debates, inspiration, motivation, conversations that provoke, and maybe even a few arguments. But this is, understand that Mercury is classically not at home in Sagittarius, even though it's sort of on paper, like, well, Mercury makes sense in Sag. They both like to learn, they like to travel, they like to explore. Mercury, it's ruled by Gemini. So Mercury's in its opposite sign. And so sometimes Mercury in Sag can lean on the I know it all. I have all the answers. I'm right. And you know what? Mercury in Sag, 99% of the time, you are right. It's just that 1%. So this is a week where whatever conversations that we're having, whatever choices that we're making, whatever directions that we're heading, the second you think you are rock solid right, just, you know what, maybe I'm wrong. And that's a way of working with that Mercury and Sag. So it just kind of gives it a little bit of air, a little wiggle room, and it still allows it to be very intelligent, sometimes a little sarcastic, but also very, let's say, generous in sharing its point of view, its wisdom, and its knowledge. Then we go into midweek, and then on Thursday, December 1st, which I can't believe it's going to be December 1st, Venus follows Mercury and also makes a opposition to Mars and Gemini. So Venus and Mars in opposition, it's classically very flirtatious, sexy. It's sort of like it's into banter, especially in the Gemini and Sagittarius thing. And it's one of those things where it's like, wait a second, are we having a fight or are we flirting? But there is that sense of like, maybe you want to like engage somebody or have a little romantic something, but by showing off how much you know, or sort of having a really intelligent conversation. But it can make for, let's say, a little bit of some friction in relationships, and maybe just the right amount of friction. Venus in Sagittarius, where it is right now, it typically wants a lot of space and movement. And so there's sort of these larger themes around like freedom and being able to do whatever you want to do. And if Gemini is part of your relationship story, it's like just whatever you do, just make sure it's what you want. And I think Gemini sometimes wants to do something that's very different, and even Sag, than sort of the traditional narrative. So maybe we need to look at other ways of doing relationship this week and figure out what works for you. Also on the 1st of December, Mercury squares Neptune. So yeah, Neptune's hanging out in Pisces, and I think I said a few moments ago, Neptune turns direct, which we'll get to in a moment. So Mercury is the planet of ideas, information, thinking, learning, choice. Neptune is one of the 3 evolutionary planets in astrology after Uranus and Pluto. Neptune does its evolutionary work, meaning it's trying to get you to grow and evolve. It's trying to get us to grow and evolve. And it does that by any means possible. But it does that through trying to make something a deeper spiritual work. What does that mean? When something's a spiritual work, it doesn't run on what we want. It doesn't run on our timeline. And that's sometimes a very unpopular share. I feel like sometimes when I say things about Neptune, people are like, oh, wait, what? Neptune dissolves the boundaries between this world and the next world. And it's really hard to often get a grasp on Neptune because it's running in the background. So when it touches on a personal planet, Mercury is a personal planet, how we think and listen and learn and how we choose and how we communicate needs a spiritual work. To make something a spiritual work is to refine it. It means that there is something that is required of us to learn and to grow and to explore that, on paper or even on the level of the ego, just like what's going on. On a more mundane level, Mercury square Neptune says, like, maybe double check the facts. Is this true? Or is it a projection? Or is it a seduction? Is it a fantasy? Mercury square Neptune is also great for creative writing and music and poetry and art. So not all is lost. It's sort of this idea of creative communication, creative thinking, sometimes a little creative with the truth, Mercury and Neptune. So use it wisely, meditate, reflect, and really rely upon intuition with Mercury and Neptune. Then we get into our marquee event for the week. We have Neptune turning direct at 22 degrees of Pisces on December 3rd. So this is sort of closing out our week as the Saturday, December 3rd. So, I was kind of alluding to Neptune a few moments ago. Neptune's been retrograde in Pisces since June 27th of 2022. Turned retrograde just 25 degrees, and so Neptune doesn't move very far in the sky. In fact, it takes 14 years to go through all of the zodiac. It takes 14 years to go through each of the zodiac signs. It takes 164, 5, 6 years. I can't remember what it is. 146 years. I got the numbers backwards. 146 years to go through all the zodiac signs. So it's been in Pisces since 2011, 2012, since February of 2012. And that's a long time for a planet to be in one sign. And so Neptune is really getting us to do a deeper work on our relationship with the archetype of Pisces. What's Pisces? Well, Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac. And if every sign that precedes Pisces talks about our real world, our manifested world, the world that we can touch, then Pisces talks about the world that we can't see, that we can't touch. It's something that's just outside the bounds of this physical plane. And the symbol of Pisces is two fish swimming in two different directions. And sort of this reminder that the physical goes back to the physical at the end of life, and that the spirit goes back to spirit at the end of life. And it also talks about the duality of choice and sort of the duality of what our choices can fuel in this world. And Pisces is also the bridge to Aries, the first sign of the zodiac. And so the cycle begins again. When we get to Pisces, we're no longer on planet Earth. We've left Aquarius, which talks about society and humanity and these very sort of earthly systems and structures that govern our life, and then we get into something beyond. And that's why Pisces has this reputation for being the mystic, for being spiritual. I think my dog's like digging in the couch right now. Why Pisces has the reputation for, mysticism and spirituality. And it's in Pisces that we can feel things that we cannot feel things in all other 11 zodiac signs. So Neptune, as this evolutionary planet, is trying to evolve our relationship with Pisces. A lot of us live our lives where we stop at Aquarius. Aquarius is like, Aquarius is what's called Saturn ruled air. It's the last air sign. It can't grasp the subtlety unless it knows how to pass over to Pisces. Otherwise, you get that very hard Aquarian archetype, very intellectual, very heady in its mind, maybe even a little disconnected from its body because it's so in its head that it loses that ability to grasp the subtle, to grasp the spiritual, to grasp meaning. So on a cultural level, it's very interesting. The last 10 years, it seems like everybody's into astrology, and not everybody, but a lot more than, let's say, when I started out, 12 whatever years ago. More people are into astrology, crystals, saging, sort of these spiritual leanings. I mean, some of it can be a little bit hollow, but I think that that's in its highest perspective, or its highest potential with Pisces, is that we learn to really discover who we are. And that's the level of Pisces, is the universal self. But there's the other side of Pisces. It's illusions, it's fantasies, it's hysteria, it's being caught in something and not really being in reality anymore. So this week we're really feeling that Neptune energy as Neptune turns direct on December 3rd. And maybe we feel a little spacey, ungrounded. Maybe we feel overwhelmed. I mean, Pisces is the last water sign. It's not my emotion. It's not your emotions. It's not even our emotions. It's every emotion. It's every emotion, every plant, animal, whatever planet. It's so vast that we feel everything. And that's why Pisces can be a bit of a transmitter. And if you have a strong Pisces in your chart, you can be visionary. You can be very empathic, very intuitive, very spiritual. But some people use that energy, there's that sense of like kind of luring people into something with that energy, or kind of being the cult leader with that energy. Or sometimes I even think of Steve Jobs, who was an absolute visionary and sort of created these products that sort of had this sense of like cult-like status, but he was well known in his personal life for being having a huge anger problem and sort of yelling and screaming at people. So it's why we can't really look at a sign and sort of say, oh yes, all Pisces are like that, all whatever. But it's just an energy. How do we live it? That's up to you. So here we are, Neptune's turning direct, and in a way it's touching back on all these very subtle moments over the last 10 years while Neptune's been in Pisces. And so if you are feeling like you need to rest, then rest, or really maybe your dreams are more vivid. But Neptune, like I said, in its highest potential, is opening up our hearts and even our souls to compassion, to understanding, to when you feel something, or that sense of recognition, you feel something that somebody else is going through, and it completely changes how you see things. And Pisces and even Neptune, it can really make things amplify, and sometimes it can break our hearts, and I mean that in the best possible way, so that something isn't so hard and rigid. Aquarius, it's that sort of that membrane that exists between this world and the next world is a little bit more penetrable. Think about this membrane as whatever wraps around a cell. It's what separates one cell from another, a cell membrane. But you even have fascia that wraps around your body, or skin that wraps around your body is what separates you from other people. But there's no such thing as separation, Pisces reminds us. Even Neptune reminds us in Pisces that a cell by itself dies because it has nothing to communicate with. That's how a cell maintains life. So what happens when we are in isolation? When we are not connected, something happens. So we're feeling our feelings this week, and maybe feeling some existential feelings this week, especially as Pisces plays off of the Sagittarius new moon, Sagittarius season, Jupiter conjunct Neptune. Jupiter doesn't make an exact conjunction to Neptune in this go round, but they're both in the same sign, not that far apart from one another. If you are born in that sort of that last 5-10 days of Pisces, like, take care of yourself, don't push. Maybe you're feeling a little, like I said, ungrounded, a little spacey. Maybe you have a vision that completely changes how you see things in a positive way. So open up your eyes, but of course stay rock solid, rooted and grounded in reality. So anyway, kind of got off a little bit tangent. Let's look at the astrology for each of the zodiac signs for the week of November 28th through December 4th of 2022. Starting with Aries. So Aries, Neptune turning direct is really hard to grasp that, because Pisces is what's called your 12th sign. And so Neptune's been running behind the scenes for the last 10 years. But for you, Aries, ask yourself, what is your relationship with spirituality, faith, mysticism, that inner search for something subtle? That's what Neptune's trying to do. It's trying to, let's say, get you let go. So let go of the things that you don't need anymore, and really pay attention to your dreams, your intuitions, the sort of inner knowings during this time. Neptune, in a very, like I said, subtle way, has been laying a path for Saturn's arrival in March of 2023. And you're going to be entering a time, Aries, that is going to be more focused on spirituality, coming to the end of things, letting go of things. And I think Pisces tries to get us to be very zen, in the sense that, all things must end. That sense of, like, even with in where they make the circles in the sand, and then they mess over the sand. Anyway, whatever. So Pisces is to really kind of connect to some sort of deeper sense of self, a deeper sense of knowing, mysticism, reflection, meditation, go for a walk. Aries, you typically have a lot of physical exercise or physical energy and need a lot of exercise. Mars is trining Saturn this week, so it's a good week to really kind of get concrete about things, to map out a vision, and then be ready, hopefully in the new year, when Mars turns direct on your planet. Mars turns direct on January 12th. Taurus. So Neptune's been spending 10 years in your sign of friends, community, but also a sign that kind of points you towards the larger whole, certainly on a physical humanity level, not on necessarily a spiritual level. Having Pisces as the 11th sign, Taurus, and you actually do have a strong need to want to give back and to help other people, a sort of a sense of compassion for humanity. And maybe that's something that's been really ramped up or present in maybe subtle ways over the past decade. Jupiter has been in this space as well, really sort of looking at themes around friends and community. Who do I belong to? Who could I connect to? I was saying this for Aries, like Saturn's going to move into this space next year, and it's really going to be a lot of this deeper work around friends and community. It's like, how does it start to take shape, become solid? So these bigger commitments around other people, or commitments around humanity, society, getting involved in social causes, social equity, social justice. But Venus, your planet, it's over in Sagittarius, and Sagittarius for you is something called your 8th sign. It's a little bit of a deeper time, certainly while Venus is in Sagittarius right now, this deeper emotions and what does it all mean, and am I safe? How do I hold on to something when everything is changing? And certainly you've been through a lot of change right now. But there is these bigger themes around value and worth that are coming up this week for you, Taurus. Gemini. Gemini, it's not your season, but certainly there's a lot of activity that's happening this week in your astrology. So let's not forget that Mars is in Gemini from August 20th all the way to March 25th of 2023. That is a long time for Mars to be in one sign, let alone your sign. And Gemini, really take stock at this point. Like, how has Mars affected you? Have you been more active? Have you had more to say? Have you been short-tempered? Have you been angry? And maybe that's where, Mars turning retrograde, although this was October 30th, is just bringing up a lot of this deeper relationship with action, power, and even anger. Mars is in a long square to Neptune. Sometimes I'm dyslexic. Mars is in a long square to Neptune, and this is this 7-month period is also about a deeper spiritual work around action, power, new beginnings, drive, leadership, and really having something revealed to you in the process. It's like what your relationship was with Mars at the start of this process in August. And in theory, it's different by the time you get to March of 2023. So you've got Mars, and think of Mars that's, pinging off of Mercury and Venus, and then next week, the Sun. So there's a lot of things happening between you and other people. This may be showing up in how you show up and how you interact and connect with other people, maybe even showing up in your primary relationships. Maybe there's a lot of action, a lot of spirited debate. Maybe there's even some arguments. Like I said, Mars is in your sign. But then there's this big focus on Pisces. And Pisces is your career sign, and Neptune's been there for the last decade. Yes, a decade. So over the last decade, Neptune has had an influence on your career, and having Pisces as your career sign, and maybe you use this in certain ways to use your voice as a transmitter, Pisces, or maybe you use Pisces as your career sign to sort of, it's like whatever you do in this world, your heart and your soul have to be in it, because Pisces by its nature, it wants to give back, but it's in the space in your astrology, it's about your professional life, your career, your ambitions. So how does your career and your ambitions line up with your heart and your soul? I don't know, maybe that's possible. Maybe that's a struggle. Neptune, in a way, has been quietly eroding at something. Maybe that's obvious to you, Gemini, when you look back over the 10 years. Maybe it's not obvious. But the greater goal is to align your ambitions, your relationship with power and authority, and your professional life and your career, so that it's some sort of transformation has happened over the past decade, and it will continue to happen into 2026, 2027. Yes, 2026, 2027. So that said, I guess, Neptune's a little bit of a quieter influence, but it's trying to reveal something to you about your professional goals, your professional aims, and your relationship with ambition. When Neptune is part of the career story, I'm like, I don't care if they pay you $1 million and you sit in the highest office in the corner of the world. First, it has to feed your soul. So never forget that, Gemini. First, it has to feed your soul. Cancer. So Neptune has been in your 9th sign of truth, faith, wisdom, knowledge, higher education, travel, exploration over the last decade. This means different things to different Cancers. Maybe this has been a softening of how you see the world, how you see yourself. Maybe you've sort of been caught in something. But there is this deeper spiritual work that's happening on a very quiet level around truth. What is your truth, Cancer? Do you think it's capital T truth? Hopefully lower T truth. But so it's harder to see Neptune's influence because this part of the chart, it's about the higher mind. Like, what does that even mean? The higher mind is where we want to learn something about the world. We're seeking and exploring. It sort of shapes our vision. It shapes our truth and our convictions. So that's where it's like you have to sort of reflect, Cancer, on how this has shown up for you, and maybe you've lost faith or maybe you've regained faith. And I don't mean the faith necessarily of religion. It's just that sense of connection to something greater. And by the time you get to the end of this transit in a few years, it's sort of like, how has your relationship with the world shifted and changed since 2012? That said, Cancer, Sagittarius season for you is a time to get really focused on getting things organized, your health, your wellness, and maybe sort of the push and the pull this week is how your beliefs, how your way of seeing the world impacts your day-to-day life positively, negatively. Sometimes we think, about our health and our wellness is shaped about what we think is possible and what is not possible. Maybe you're opening up to new ways of taking care of yourself. Leo, so you're a fire sign. The fire signs is about, sort of that action, drive, and the creative power and sharing and that motivation and confidence. And Sagittarius is sort of really amping that up for you. Sagittarius is also a fire sign. So this is a season for you to get back to what makes you you. And it's a thing, Leo, you've been through a lot of hard astrology, what with Saturn and Aquarius, Uranus and Taurus, and the eclipses since last year, if not going back to 2018, 2019. So how do you have a little bit of fun? Yes, Leo, have a little bit of fun. And I think I've said this last week and I'll say it again. Like, Leo, you are the sign of the sun. Your job is to shine and to inspire and motivate us to be ourselves. What happens when you lose that fire and that passion and that motivation? So this is why it's important for you to renew yourself this season. And I think where some of the tug and the friction is happening is that Neptune is turning direct in your 8th. The 8th, it's this space, and I realize that 14 years is a really long time to wrap our heads around it, but it's a subtle process that's happening of trying to reveal the parts of you, the facets of you that get in the way of you shining your light. It could be a trauma. It could be just a lack of self-worth or confidence, or you stop yourself. But it's like, how does, what's in the way of that fire, and sort of that's the spiritual work. The spiritual work is ultimately, especially as Neptune eventually will wrap up its time in Pisces, is to reveal you, the real you. The real you comes from that creative spark and fire, on an esoteric level, the spark of the divine that lives within, and that's your work to reveal that. And sometimes it's not easy to see where you are self-sabotaging yourself or something is getting in the way, but that's maybe how Neptune is showing up for you this week. Virgo, so a lot of action and movement in your astrology right now. Let's start with Mercury, your planet. It's in Sagittarius. So, Virgo, Sagittarius forms the base of your astrology chart. So this is the season that's about home, it's about family, tending to your emotional roots, your emotional core, a sense of stability and grounding, and really being here in this life. And maybe on a very mundane level, you have to take care of matters in the home, or there's a move, or you need to sort of make changes in your household or your home environment. So Mercury, alongside Venus is also down there with you, is opposing Mars. Well, Mars is up in your career sign, and it's spending 7 months there. I know it's retrograde right now, and so this sort of larger framework of time, Virgo, about your relationship in the world. How do you lead? How do you take power? How do you assert yourself? How do you go after your ambitions? And how does that shift and change over a 7-month period while Mars makes a square to Neptune? The thing about Neptune influence, and certainly it's happening a lot in your astrology this week, is how are we at peace, or how do we accept when things don't happen on our timeline? I think that's one of the hardest things with Neptune, is that it reminds us that there are forces and there are things that are greater than us. And how do we find the compassion for ourselves and the compassion for others, because things aren't exactly going the way that we want them to go. And I think that that's really at the heart of a lot of this long Neptune opposition to Virgo, is learning, Virgo, I always call Virgo a secret Scorpio. It's like Virgo is like learning to let go of that tight control, and Neptune is like by any means possible. And I'm really being real for a moment, because Neptune does its work by any means possible. And maybe you've had experiences over the last 10 years, Virgo, where you realize that you are not in control, that there are things that are greater than you. Maybe you're like, what are you talking about, Katie? Everything's fine. Really work with the Neptune opposition. So that said, with all this energy, especially just after the new moon, and then we have the first quarter moon, and it's putting this emphasis on relationships and other people. That's the other thing this week. It's so much about relationships and other people. It's like, how do you just learn to really find the balance point in all of this, and to be at peace? If there are some things that you are, a wonderful Virgo about, you can organize and be on top of the details. And then there's the other side of things. You just need to surrender the details and maybe not get so myopic about every little thing, because Neptune's like, hey, pay attention to the world, pay attention to other people. But it's a little bit of a push and pull this week. And like I said, I believe in you, Virgo. Libra. So Neptune is turning direct in your 6th sign. It's really hard to wrap our heads around Neptune's time, because it's been a decade, since February of 2012. It's been in your sign of health and wellness, work, projects, day-to-day life. Neptune, it's this long spiritual work on your relationship with the day-to-day world. And this is going to mean different things to different Libras, or even Libra risings, because maybe Libra, you are super on top of your human life, like brushing your teeth, going to work, getting everything organized, projects. Maybe you're not. And so Neptune is saying, like, how do you start to have, not start to, because it's so long, this like long process of redefining and refining your relationship with the physical world, including health. Sometimes Neptune in this part of the chart, there's that weird an allergy. It's like, why do I have this weird allergy? Because Neptune does dissolve the boundaries between this world and the next world. And sometimes we can sort of get things that sort of irritate our skin or sort of irritate our stomach. And there's actually energetic connections to it. Not a doctor. But anyway, really look at sort of this longer story around health and wellness and your relationship with your body and your relationship with sort of being the boss of the details of your day-to-day life. Libra, you've got all this energy happening in your third, so it's a bit of a chatty time for you. A lot of push and pull and movement between your ideas, the things you want to say, things you want to share, your voice, communication, choice, and also Mars at the other end of the sky, the other end of your chart, up in your ninth. And so this might be a week where you're really saying things and maybe sort of saying things that you believe in and sort of standing up for what you believe in. But just make sure that you're not shooting first, asking questions later, as they say. So just if you have something that you want to share, and maybe it's coming from a place of passion and zeal and inspiration, you really want other people to know, it's like, just take a breath first. And maybe it's an opinion. You're ready to tell people just exactly what you think. Just, take a breath first. That's all. But that said, there's a big focus on education and communication this week, exploration, travel. And then Venus is also wrapping up its time in your sixth. So continue to get really into the details and how you take care of your day-to-day life. Scorpio. Hard to wrap around, this 10-year transit of Neptune and Pisces. And Pisces for you is what's called your fifth sign. The fifth sign is a lot of things. It's a sense of individuality and identity. It's creativity. It's self-expression. It's fun. It's talents. But this is a 10-year so far spiritual work. What does that mean? The sense of who you thought you were in 2012 versus who you are now, in theory, you're like just scraping away the layers. The thing is that there's the identity of who you are, which is immutable. It is. You want to talk about capital T truth? That's you. But it's like, is it? So you have to really discover that inner flame inside of you that makes you. And sometimes being a Scorpio, you just want to burn it all down, but don't. So Neptune is like, how do you reveal who you truly are? Like kind of peeling things away. And that means peeling away the influence of other people, cultural expectations, and doing things the way that you are, air quotes, supposed to do them. In theory, by the time you get to the end of this transit, you have a very different relationship with self, your talents, your creativity, and sort of this deeper revelation of self that has been ongoing and building for the last decade. But in total, this will be 14 years. We've got 4 more years of this transit. So it's a little bit of a subtle influence. And Sagittarius season for you is about money, income, material stability, material security, spending, but sort of these deeper themes around self-worth. And if you don't think you have any self-worth, even if you don't admit it to yourself, that's going to show up in how you express who you are. And I'm kind of popping into my head. I mean, that's the thing about narcissism. It's like attracting people who are narcissists in our lives. It's like narcissists come in because they are happy to occupy the space about who we are that we're not occupying. They're happy to tell us who we are because we don't know who we are. So Neptune is saying, know who you are. And knowing who you are also means knowing who you are on a larger level, sort of a larger spiritual level. That said, Mars is in the mix this week. Mars is in your 8th. It's so much about sort of this, am I safe? What's going on? Like, what does it all mean? And sort of getting into these sort of deeper existential questions, but also money, finance, spending, investments, estates, inheritances, shared assets, benefits, debt, all the gamuts of finance. But there you go. Sagittarius, happy birthday, Sagittarius. You just had a new moon last week, so here we are. We're in this new chapter, a sense of renewal, forward movement. Your planet Jupiter is also direct as of last week's new moon. So now that your planet is direct, it's going to make a beeline towards the end of Pisces on December 28th. So you got like 4 more weeks of Jupiter being back in your sign of home and family. There is something that you are wrapping up around this concept of who is home and where is home. And maybe it's something about parents, or something about the household, or where you're living, or maybe it's even sort of these deeper emotional, core issues, the past, memory, am I safe, getting your needs met. Jupiter has been laying a path for Saturn, getting ahead of myself, because Saturn is going to go into this space on March 7th and spend 3 years here. So really pay attention to these larger themes around home and family, because you're probably going to be revisiting them starting next year. But Jupiter loves Pisces. That's a bit of renewed faith and optimism. But that said, you do have this really dynamic energy that's happening between you and other people. You have Mars retrograde in your relationship sign. It's about other people at the moment. Mars square Neptune. That's the thing about Neptune's influence, is that doesn't always happen exactly the way that you want to and on the timeline that you want to. And maybe that's sort of finding peace and sort of moving from the impatience of Mars into sort of that peace of Neptune, that it's going to happen when it's going to happen. That said, Neptune has been in your 4th sign since February of 2012. I know it's a long time. And the last decade and even 4 more years of this has sort of been this deep spiritual work around your emotional core, your emotional needs, getting your needs met, your ability to connect on an intimate level, and even purifying something about home and family and the past. So there's a lot of dynamic energy that's happening about you and other people and career and relationships and home and family. And it's a lot that's coming up. And all of this is in advance of the Gemini full moon that will happen next week on, I believe it's December 7th. Capricorn. So Saturn's still in your 2nd sign. Again, it's sort of this larger arc that's about value, worth, spending, income, your relationship with the material plane. That said, Sagittarius for you represents the end of your personal zodiac calendar. And when you are in the 12th room, as I like to call it, it's not about the material plane. That's the irony to this time, is that it's both. Here you are in the 2nd, which is so much about like your physical life and your physical needs, shelter, food, money. But then what does it all mean? Like, is it enough to have stuff? What does it connect to? Like, sort of getting into these deeper existential questions. And that's where Sagittarius has led you to. And looking at this sort of larger theme around choice and the choices that you make, don't forget that, Jupiter is down in your 3rd. Neptune has been there since 2012. And so this has on one level been opening you up to the intuitive mind. On the other level, it's this deep spiritual work about the choices that you make in life and how you sort of look at sort of everything that you've been doing. I know it's a heavy work, but also how do you use your mind? How do you communicate? How do you listen and learn? That's also part of this deeper spiritual work that's been happening since 2012. But the idea that now that you are in Sagittarius season, it's that you sort of come into the end of something. It's time to let go. It's time to clear space, physically, spiritually, emotionally, as you prepare for your season that will come at the end of December. But that said, there's a lot of push and pull that's happening between health and wellness this week, or sort of the duties and responsibilities on a day-to-day level that we all have to take care of. So don't lose things in the details this week, Capricorn. Really pay attention to all the finer points, and also at the same time, learn to let go of really honestly of what's not important anymore. Aquarius. So Saturn is wrapping up its time in your sign, and in a way, a lot of the stuff that's happening in Pisces this week is a thread to what's going to be happening in 2023, 2024, and 2025, and part of 2026. So Saturn in March of 2023 is going to go into Pisces, and you're going to begin a 3-year chapter that's about value, worth, income, your relationship with money, your relationship with your material life. But Neptune's been in this space since 2012. And when Neptune is part of the money story, whether it's natally or by transit, it's like, I don't care if they might pay you $1 million. First, it has to feed your soul. So things can't just be for money's sake. Doesn't mean you can't make money. It's like really realizing that at the end of the day, what does it matter? What does it mean? What does it connect to? What does it feed? And you can't bring money with you. And learning to find that balance between your physical life and your physical needs and your spiritual life and your spiritual needs. That said, Jupiter's there. Jupiter loves to spend when it's in the second, so maybe money and income are really a big focus at the moment. Aquarius, Sagittarius season for you is about friends and community and sort of looking ahead towards the future now that you're coming off a Scorpio season, which represents the top, the peak of your personal zodiac calendar. And there's just a lot of push and pull that's happening between friends and community, but also these larger themes about you and what makes you you. And maybe you're trying to figure out how to assert yourself in the world or have to negotiate friends and community. And it's bringing up some of these deeper themes around value and worth, and maybe even if you are valuable and of worthiness, and maybe your talents, gifts, and abilities, and if how do you share them with the world, and sort of maybe some insecurities around whether they are valuable or worthy. Finally, Pisces. So something that I was said at the beginning of our time together is that there's a lot of things happening in Pisces this week. Neptune's turning direct. Jupiter's went back into Pisces. It was back at the end of October, but it turned direct last week. So there's a lot of movement in Pisces right now, and you are a Pisces. So this is sort of these themes around new beginnings, initiative, action, moving forward, really feeling like you have the wind in your sails at the moment. But don't forget, Pisces, is that Neptune's been in Pisces since February of 2012, and there was a little bit of a dip in 2011. And, it's hard to really grasp what that means because it's such a long influence. It's, 10 years. But sort of this greater evolution of self that's been happening since 2012. And maybe you've been more intuitive, more sensitive, had to open up more to the world. That said, Sagittarius season is your career sign. And so this is about really looking at your professional ambitions, your place in the world, the direction in life, and really, taking command, taking the helm, especially now that Jupiter is direct, but there's Mars down in your fourth. So this is really push and pull dynamic between home and family, your inner world, the needs of your inner world, and your professional life, the needs of your professional life, and also the duties and responsibilities that you play in the world. So how do you find balance? How do you feel like you're not caught in the middle, or a relationship is caught in the middle, or somebody else's needs are caught in the middle? So it's a week to really figure out what the balance point is, and maybe that's a little bit to Neptune's credit as it turns direct on December 3rd, is sometimes you have to reconcile about the things that you have control over and the things that you don't have control over, and the things that are truly important and the things that are not important. So that is your look at the astrology of November 28th through December 4th, 2022. My name is Katie Sweetman. This has been Empowering Astrology. Follow me online at empoweringastrology.com. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Spotify. As I said at the beginning, I'm doing my yearly roundup for 2023. I'm doing the webinar for 2023 on December 15th at 8 p.m. Eastern. You can get the replay. The replay is always available within a couple of hours after the live event. And a lot of people, I know a lot of you sign up for it. So always good to check in and to see how you are doing, as we go into December, the last month of the year. Can't believe here we are. So we'll talk next week. But in the meantime, have a great week, and really, sit with these deeper existential themes as we navigate both Sagittarius and Pisces. So until next week, take care. Bye-bye.